Go get the thing. What's going on?
I think you're right on target with that. Yes.
I just want to go back just a step in that the lawyer's, response was love the fellow man and love God, and that's so New Testament. When we look back at the Old Testament, especially a lot of evangelical Christians, it's all, the Ten Commandments, and that's been done away with, just to love God and love our fellow man. And it was interesting that he came up with that response, that it was, I don't know, it's to me, it was showed insight so that he can drill down through all the study. That's just, a little something interesting to me.
So do you think he really wanted to help his neighbor, or was his intention to be, look at me, I know the law back and forth, the whole thing. He said, and you just tell me who my neighbor is. I take care of my neighbor too. I'm perfect. I'm going to be there. So, question might be, is it, if you're this guy, don't you think you should leave well enough alone?
It could have ended with when he said, "You do this and you'll live."
Yeah, he was off the hook, but he didn't see himself as being on the hook.
Yeah.
Ever. He was. I mean, Jesus was just an itinerant preacher. He was an expert in the law. It was an uneven contest, right? And it was. Ultimately, it was a very uneven contest. So,
Ted,
yes,
he saw Jesus, I think, as a way to expose his knowledge to the people around him. Not that he believed in what Jesus was saying, but this was his idea. I can show them I know more than the speaker.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. You can just see that guy pulling his stunt, and Jesus never let him get away with it by answering his questions. So, is Jesus ever without an answer? When this guy knows the whole law, and he's like lots of lawyers can't understand their language anyway, but Jesus always had an answer. Luke 10 and verse 30. Who has that one?
I do. Okay. You want the whole story or just?
No, I just want 10 verse 30.
Well, this, I'm sure, surprised him when he gave him this example. First verse is, Jesus replied with an illustration. A Jewish man was traveling on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho. That's not very far if you've been there, like 3 miles away.
Yeah. But that's fine.
They stripped him of his clothes and money and left him half dead beside the road.
So when the guy asked the question, so who's my neighbor? What did Jesus do?
Story. Only with you.
Told a story. The whole story. And it's this story. Luke chapter 10, verses 31 and 32. The story continues. Please.
A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side.
Very interesting. Why would a priest do what this priest did? And is there a difference between the priest and the Levite? And so the priest is a guy who spends his life in the church and is really good at that. And he dresses in fine garments, and he takes his role of leadership seriously. And he never went to medical school. He never drove a horse-drawn ambulance. He had important things to do. I don't know what he planned to do in Jericho. He was on his way down a long slope from Jerusalem down to Jericho. So he didn't have time to mess around with a guy that had gotten himself beat up. It wasn't the priest's fault. So he just walked by on the other side of the road. The Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. Um, what did a Levite do?
Served in the temple, took care of the temple.
Yeah, they were the guys who cleaned the porches and helped prepare the sacrifices and cleaned up after that. And they were the deacons of the church, but the priests were their idols. They're the ones they looked up to. So when the Levite saw the priest go by, he said, "Well, that must be the thing to do." I don't want to do this anyway. So he walked on down there too. So Luke 10:33 and 34. Who showed compassion versus that? Yeah, versus Luke 10:33, 34. Who's got that?
I do.
Okay, read it so we can hear it.
But a Samaritan who was traveling came to where the injured man was. And when he saw him, he felt compassion for him. He went up to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oils and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, took care of him.
So who was the guy?
Samaritan.
Yes.
My translation says he despised Samaritan.
Interesting. A despised person. As I was thinking about that, I wonder if that were being written today,
Defensive.
would it be and a member of the Hezbollah going down that road? And he stopped, took care. Or Hamas. He was known as being from the Hamas, but there was something in his heart that drew him to this man that had been beaten so severely, near death. How do you think that would have gone down today? That who would stop to take care of him? What about that is so unexpected? Yeah.
So I want to backtrack just a little bit. The priest in those days actually bid to become the priest. It was like bidding, and they would, because they were making money with the money changers. So when we think of a priest, we think of a godly person, a godly pastor, but it was a person that actually bought that position and made money off of it. So it kind of gives you, during cross day, gives you a little insight into that person not willing to. Yeah.
So how many of you could raise your hand and say, I've seen that in person? Yeah. Well, there's several of you. Where is it? On Melinda, right in the passing of sidewalks that people walk back and forth all hours of the day, every day. So here's the priest in the far right of the picture. There's a Levite following him, and then finally we have the Hezbollah picking him up, watching him a bit. A couple of days ago, I had already left to come down here. We had house guests from Chattanooga, and they had a little boy who desperately wanted to see the Nashville Zoo. And Nashville has a remarkably good zoo. Right now, in addition to the zoo, they have a big display of dinosaurs. And the folk who were visiting with us have this little 5-year-old boy who's into dinosaurs. So they got up day before yesterday, I guess, and they got the guest in the car, and they got my granddaughter, Courtney, and her friend, Karina. Both of them are in nurse anesthesia school now, right there in Nashville, which means that both of them had been ICU nurses for a period of 3 years or so. Courtney did ICU nursing for 4 different hospitals. The most recent one at Loma Linda in their trauma and transplant unit. And she was there for almost a year. Her brother, Colton, you tell him the proud grandfather, but Colton just finished his 2nd year of training for medicine at Loma Linda. He's got a couple of weeks off before he starts on the floors with his clinical years. And so they were all in the car. And about a mile from our house, you turn a corner and there's a dermatology clinic right there, just under a mile from our house. And as Jennifer drove past there, Courtney was looking out the window at that clinic. And she said, "Mom, stop. There's a woman in trouble." And indeed she was. There was an elderly woman who was flat on her back on the pavement of the parking lot of that dermatology office, and she was bleeding from all over her face. Somehow she had contacted that pavement with her forehead, and she was just bleeding. Her husband was standing maybe 10 feet away from her on curbing. So Courtney, apparently they had a couple of clean towels in the car. So she got those towels. Somehow they had a bottle of water too. So she wet that, wrung it out, and started putting pressure on that woman's face. The woman herself was not in great distress. She knew she was hurt, but she was not crying. She was not screaming. She was sort of matter of fact about what had happened to her. So Courtney started taking care of her. Her friend Karina, who's also in the nurse anesthesia school, went into the office of the dermatologist. There were 2 receptionists at the desk. There was only 1 doctor working that day, and he had 1 patient back there. And Karina said, "We need your help right here in your parking lot. We need to take care of this woman." And they just blew it off. The doctor was busy, and they didn't feel like they had any responsibility. So while Courtney took care of the woman, I think it was Jennifer that called for an ambulance. But before the ambulance got there, just around the corner, there's a firehouse, and the guys were there in less than 3 minutes. They just, once they got the phone call, they came and took care of that. But I just couldn't help but have that in my mind when Harlan said about the Good Samaritan. There's my granddaughter. I'm a proud guy. She's a wonderful nurse. She really is. And she works hard. She studies hard. She's doing well in nurse anesthesia school. Is that my only neighbor? I don't recall seeing someone in that condition. But what I do see virtually every day as I drive down the road, there's someone who's not so well dressed, disheveled appearance, holding up a sign, says, "Did this for our country. Can you help me?" I'm not, only rarely have I stopped, and it was for, I don't know if I can get away with this. It was for a young woman who was on the mid thing in a 4-lane highway, holding up her sign, and I reached in my billfold. I had a $5 bill. It's the only one I had, so I gave her my $5 bill. Years ago, one of my family practice residents had a real heart for homeless people, and by himself, he opened a small clinic in downtown Orlando for homeless street people. And then one of his resident colleagues joined him, and they would open up 2 evenings a week for homeless people to get medical care. I actually did a few stints there for those young men who were making such a significant gift to the community. And I learned about homeless people. The homeless people we see on the street, in the kind of description I gave you, are, for the most part, 80% of them are either drug addicted or mentally ill. The other 20% are harder to categorize, especially if it's a woman or a woman and child. Often that's a domestic dispute that gets them thrown out of the house and no place to go. And somehow that touches my heart more than even the one that says, lost my foot for our country. What do we do? Do we just drive by? Do we keep $5 bills or $20 bills in our GoPro? So I'll tell you about Jackie. This is a true story. Only it was repeated any number of times. She carried $20 bills in her purse, and she was eating at I forget whether it was McDonald's or I don't know where it was, but the person who served her did a really nice job, and she said, "You did such a good job," and she hands him a $20 bill. I wasn't there. He said, "I can't believe this." He said, "I got to pick up my kids, and I don't have enough gas to get there to the school to pick them up." And he said, "This does it for me. I can pick up my kids this afternoon because of your $20 bill." That wasn't the only $20 bill that he gave away. He loved doing that, and I have to wonder if she didn't have a special line to the Holy Spirit that says this person needs $20. And what was I going to say? Indeed, that was the case. Yes.
I had an experience a couple months ago. I'll try to keep it as short as
Make sure they can hear you in the back corner
Okay.
there.
I had an experience a couple of months ago. I was going to the UPS in a office to mail a package. And there was a curb that steps up to go into UPS glass front. And this man steps up, but he misses his step because he's on his phone. And he goes flying head first into the ground, hits his head on the glass. The glass is like shaking. And he was just still. And then I thought, oh dear. And so I put my package down. I knelt down and I said, sir, are you okay? Are you okay? He didn't hear anything. Sir, are you okay? And then all of a sudden he started moaning. So I immediately called 911. But what was so interesting to me is we got him taken care of. But what was interesting to me was he was blocking. You couldn't get in and out. There were people that were going, excuse me, I need to get in. And this one man tried to force the door open, which hit the man in the head. And when I got home, I told Lauren, it's so interesting how humanity sometimes thinks of themselves and not of others. But the man came to, he said, I don't want to go to the hospital. You don't have to if you don't want it. And then he said to me, I just picked my wife up from the hospital. Or she gets out of the car, she's unstable. I'm holding on to her. He's on the ground moaning, and my head. And I stayed until the EMS came and their daughter came, and then I left. But it just struck me how people were a little bit able with the fact that he had fallen, and it was inconveniencing them.
Got their important business.
Yes.
The UPS.
That so much is how.
Yeah. So, I'll finish this lesson. I should. You got it. There you go.
So I think that
when he, in the story, the notion is, okay, you're supposed to love your neighbor.
Mm.
The real question is, what does love mean in that context? Because when we start using examples, particularly these kinds of examples, are you actually in your heart feeling a love for the person who, or are you pitching them $20 to assuage your feeling of guilt?
Mm. Oh, well, solves both problems. Yes. Was there a hand? No. Sure.
This thing is showing compassion, compassion, which the world is lacking today.
For sure.
And as a matter of fact, when we were in Loma Linda during that weekend, Dr. Hart was saying that they have a team of medical team to go to China now. Instead of teaching medical skill, they're teaching compassion.
Mm. Interesting.
Yeah. And I know the Chinese culture, when they do things, but just because the duty, but lack of compassion is something that is there and needs to be instilled. Right.
So we're approaching the end of this story. Who has Luke 10:35?
I do.
The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here."
So I was talking with someone yesterday about this interaction, and the question was, is this innkeeper and an EMS on the side? Is he does he have a little of his inn set up for somebody who's injured? He takes care of them. It doesn't tell us that, but apparently he was willing to take care of this person. He'd been paid a couple silver coins, and he must have known this Samaritan because he trusted him enough to take that portion of the payment to help take care of him, and he knew that man would be back and help support that. Yes.
I think there's a lot into that comment too. This is the next day. That implies he cared for him all night.
Yeah. Well, those are long nights too. So I have a friend who's a graduate of Loma Linda. Some of you may know Lee Carter. If you know him, Lauren. So he just retired from family medicine, emergency medicine. He lives in Bowling Green, which is about 50 miles from where we live, Nashville. But the church there was not a very welcoming church. And so he and his wife drive 50 miles each way to come to our church. And Lee just he's a big guy, kind of abrupt, a little gruff, but he loves people. And when there's a person who needs help, Lee's there. And he'll usually tap somebody on the shoulder. How many of you know Gordon Beats? So Gordon is one of his favorite victims, as am I. And so some of you know, about 3 months ago, we had 4 days of freezing weather, day and night. And boy, there was so much ice on the trees that branches broke off and trees were uprooted and roads were stopped. So there's a woman in our church who has a beautiful singing voice, but very little money. And she didn't have heat. So the neighbor across the street said, "You come stay with us for the next 2 or 3 days." And she did. But Lee Carter found out that they couldn't fix her furnace, but she'd been wanting a wood stove. So he found a deal on a wood stove, put it in the back of his truck, brought it to her house. Gordon Beats and I showed up to help him get that thing out of his truck and into the house and hooked up. And she was just almost speechless with that. Then some of those trees that were down, Lee had his chainsaw too. And he started cutting them up, and he built a wood receptacle thing and filled it up with wood for her. And she thought she had been translated. The most amazing thing. And that's what Lee does now that he's retired. He takes care of people. He was the Good Samaritan. Luke 10:37. Did we read 10:36? Yes, 10:36. Go.
Now, which of these would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked.
And 10:37. That's the last verse in this.
And he said, "He who showed mercy on him." Then Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." And I just wanted to add something to that, because when you go back and he asks his first question and he answers it correctly, and Jesus says, "You have answered rightly, do this and you will live." And he's saying the same thing again, go and, and do this. But you know what? I went back and was reading that, his first answer. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind. If you do that, nobody has to tell you to love your neighbor. You're going to do it automatically, and everybody will be your neighbor. The Holy Spirit will so infuse us. I do honestly believe that nobody will have to tell us, check this off, check off here. And that was what he was asking. He wanted that little checkbox. What do I need to do? And Jesus is saying, love God with everything that you have, with your whole being.
That's one of so many reasons that I've been blessed to spend a major part of my both education and career with Advent Health. Places across this country, our emergency rooms are open 24/7. We take care of people who are hurt. And some, frankly, some fellow Adventists don't understand that we are open for the sick and the injured and the desperate 36, 365 days, 24-hour days a year. We're there for you. Sometimes the injured person has to come to the one who can care for them, not always the one who stops by the side of the road, gives a $5 care. So thank you all for welcoming me home. It's just been a blessing, a treat, and to see so many of you and to that enjoy so many hugs. It's just it's a blessing beyond belief. So our time is up, and they're going to be in here washing feet pretty soon. If your feet are dirty, just stick around. We're done. Thank you.